For over 75 years, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict has dominated headlines, fueled protests, and defined foreign policies. From war zones to refugee camps, it's a story written in loss, resistance, and political failure. But in recent years, something unexpected has happened. The battlefield is no longer just in Gaza's streets. It's on our screens, our timelines, and in the chambers of international courts. This is not a story of military victory. It's a story of narrative, perception, and resilience. This is how Gaza began turning the tide against one of the most powerful military forces in the world, not through superior firepower, but through the power of global awareness, media influence, and moral capital. In the heart of the Middle East, where conflict has become generational memory, a shift has emerged that few could have predicted. It didn't come through military victory, not through tanks or airstrikes. It came through resilience, narrative, and visibility. This is the story of how Gaza, long seen as the underdog in the Israeli-Palestinian struggle, began to win something far more powerful than territory: the world's attention, and maybe, just maybe, its sympathy. Welcome to Unique Chronicles. This is Gaza Wins Over Israel, the battle beyond bullets. For over 7 decades, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict has raged through wars, intifadas, ceasefires, and failed peace talks. Gaza, a narrow strip of land home to over 2 million people, has often stood at the epicenter of this conflict, isolated, blockaded, and bombarded. Israel, a regional superpower with cutting-edge military technology and unmatched air dominance, has consistently portrayed its actions as defensive measures. Gaza, meanwhile, has been described variously as a stronghold of resistance, a humanitarian disaster zone, and a launching pad for rockets. But what happens when conventional weapons become ineffective at shaping global perception? The struggle between Israel and Gaza is what strategists call an asymmetric conflict. One side is armed with fighter jets, missile defense systems, and global diplomatic leverage. The other has homemade rockets, rudimentary tunnel networks, and smartphones. It may sound absurd to compare the two, but war in the 21st century is fought not just on the ground. It's fought on screens, on hashtags, in international courts and global forums. And that is where Gaza began to turn the tide. In 2014, during Operation Protective Edge, Israel launched a full-scale assault on Gaza following the killing of 3 Israeli teenagers and rocket fire from Hamas. Over 2,000 Palestinians were killed. More than 500 of them were children. Images of flattened neighborhoods, wounded civilians, and overwhelmed hospitals flooded the internet. For the first time, the visual evidence of suffering surpassed the official narratives. Suddenly, a question was being asked not only by activists, but by neutral observers. Is this self-defense or disproportionate retaliation? The power of imagery, citizen journalism, and social media had begun to erode Israel's global standing. Fast forward to 2021. A new generation of Palestinian voices emerges, not just through protests, but through TikToks, tweets, and live streams. A young girl in Gaza films a tank rolling past her home. A father live streams his goodbye to his daughter moments before an airstrike. These were not militant propaganda. These were real lives, unfiltered and raw. The world was no longer just watching news anchors. It was watching Gaza's people directly. As a result, public opinion began to shift, particularly in Western nations where younger generations were becoming more skeptical of traditional power dynamics and media framing. Parallel to the digital battle, a new front was opening: international law. In 2021, the International Criminal Court, ICC, opened an investigation into possible war crimes committed in the Palestinian territories. Israel rejected the investigation's legitimacy. Gaza welcomed it. For the first time, the narrative was shifting from terrorists versus defenders to victims versus occupiers, a language recognized in legal terms. Activists in Gaza and across the diaspora started collecting evidence, filing petitions, and building legal arguments. They were not just fighting in streets, they were fighting in courts. As of the early 2020s, more nations, especially in Latin America, Africa, and parts of Europe, began openly criticizing Israel's actions. Some cut diplomatic ties, others imposed trade restrictions. The language changed. No longer was Gaza simply a conflict zone. It became an example of occupation, apartheid, and collective punishment. Terms previously used cautiously, now echoed in reports by Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, and even United Nations representatives. This shift was not a military loss for Israel, but a narrative one where the question was no longer, why is Gaza fighting? But instead, why is Gaza being bombed? From Hollywood actors to football players, a new wave of influencers began speaking out about the situation in Gaza. This level of support was once unthinkable. Even prominent Jewish voices began to criticize Israeli policies, urging for human rights and a re-examination of the status quo. Major publications like The Guardian, The Intercept, and Al Jazeera began framing stories more critically, challenging decades-old narratives. Gaza, once portrayed as a faceless zone of chaos, was now seen as a community of survivors, artists, medics, and everyday heroes. This shift didn't go unchallenged. Israel launched its own campaigns, branding criticism as anti-Semitic, highlighting Hamas's attacks, and reinforcing its right to self-defense. Governments and platforms often struggled to moderate what was truth and what was incitement. But in a decentralized digital world, narrative control is no longer in the hands of states alone. It belongs to people, to those who film from rooftops, to those who post in real time. Gaza's story became Gaza's own. For decades, resistance in Gaza was seen only through rockets and riots. But in recent years, resistance has expanded through education,
Through art?
through media, through documentation. This is what asymmetric resilience looks like. When the battlefield shifts from land to narrative, even the most marginalized can become powerful. So did Gaza win? Not militarily, not politically, but perhaps in the battle that truly defines modern conflict, the battle for legitimacy, empathy, and voice, Gaza has found a form of victory, one that no blockade can contain, one that no airstrike can silence. It's the victory of visibility. The world is watching, and it is no longer seeing Gaza through one lens. This is not the end of the story, but it might be the beginning of a new chapter. Thank you for watching Unique Chronicles. If this story moved you, challenged your perspective, or opened your eyes, subscribe for more powerful untold stories from history, politics, and resistance. This has been Gaza Wins Over Israel, the battle beyond bullets. Until next time, keep seeking the untold stories that shape the world.